I do not know anything about it. Could go either way. One more opens.
Hey, Jim. John.
If it's okay with the chairman.
Yes, it's fine, Chairman.
Let me,
You can't vote.
I hear you had a great tour.
do you have him logged in twice? Do we have him logged in twice? I haven't logged him off there. I thought it's not covered.
Yeah, they're getting the. Yeah, yeah. This is not lost on me, Joe. This is not lost on me.
What?
I'm pretty prompt. Good. All right. Good afternoon. It's 1 o'clock. I'd like to call to order the December 20th meeting of the Oklahoma County Criminal Justice Authority. First item on the agenda is a roll call.
Tommy Johnson.
Present.
Loretta Radford. Sue Ann Arnall. Chad Alexander.
Present.
Ben Brown.
Here.
Kevin Calvey.
Present.
N.T. Berry.
Present.
Joe Alba.
Yes, ma'am.
Jim Catch.
Here. Thank you. We have a quorum. Next item is a Pledge of Allegiance. Trustee Alexander, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I've been advised the notice of this meeting was properly posted on December 16th, 2021. The next item on the agenda is public comment. First up, we have Sean Cummings.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hey, I actually wasn't going to come today, but there were agenda stuff that was on the Board of County Commissioners meeting this morning that had to do with you all. And one of them was somebody had sent in essentially an invoice to cover something to get permission from these guys to give money back to you, which they didn't have the right to do. My concern on this is on the same form was a legal bill for $60,000. Now, if we're going to get advice from John, Shouldn't we use it instead of bouncing this stuff back to the county commissioner so we can push it off on somebody else? And it's about COVID money that was originally designed for labor that you didn't use. Now, that can't just go into a general fund. It all has to be itemized. And the itemization was basically a joke. It looked like half of it was done by an accountant, and then the other half, a couple of people either dragged and dropped huge numbers, close to $300,000, saying that that needed to go to it. But it wasn't itemized like everything else. Now, we played this game. I know you're new, and I know you're new, and you're new. We have played this game with these guys for almost 2 years now of jacking around with this CARES money. We've got to eventually get to the point where if we're going to pay ungodly amounts of legal fees, we use the legal advice they give us instead of trying to bounce all of this stuff around so it's somebody else's fault when it gets stolen. Now, Mr. Calvi was responsible for putting it on the agenda, wouldn't answer about it, won't look at us as usual, the same bullshit. But we've eventually got to be professional about all of this. That's $300,000 of CARES Act money that now you're shopping for a way to spend. And then he wanted to clean out the CARES Act account. You don't get to do that. You have to have an invoice. It all has to be filed properly. He's an attorney. He knows this stuff. I am tired of your all's lack of professionalism. You may be tired of mine, but you get paid and I don't. Oh, yeah, you don't. He gets paid. None of us do. The guy that gets paid did the shitty job today. How about that one? I'll leave it with that.
Christopher Johnson.
Hello, everybody. I want to start off with a quote today. It's one of my favorite quotes by President John Adams. Facts are stubborn things, and whatever may be our wishes, our inclinations, or the dictates of our passions, they cannot alter the state of facts and evidence. The reason why I say that is that oftentimes in this building and others, whether it's dealing with the jail trust or dealing with CJAC, there's a lot of misinformation that gets put out as facts. Altering of statistics. Well, this day the number was lower, so that means that the population's going down. Well, that's not how statistics go. It goes by an average, not just day to day. So there's a lot of lies that get pushed out, And in the end, we need to understand what is historically documented, that creating a bigger jail has never, ever, ever, in the history of this country at least, stopped mass incarceration. It just doesn't. It just doesn't. There's an incentive. There's not an incentive to stop something if you just give people financial incentives to put people there, because it's what it is. It's a business. In the early 90s, Governor Keating was one of the instrumental people who brought private prisons to this state. So, there's no incentive. And again, as the gentleman before me mentioned, we're still messing around with this money that we can't trust you with any of it. How can we trust you with the $154 million or so if you still are not doing the right thing with the attempted money that you had before? You guys have a jail trust leadership and some detention officers are the same people who have a documented history of calculated gross human neglect and patterns of misconduct, and now you guys want more money and more lives. I don't understand why we keep doing this. You guys have done a masterful job of recruiting, you and CJAC, of recruiting activists in the community and community members to be your cheerleaders, to create a propaganda machine. It's very smart. I actually commend you on that. Whoever was instrumental in it. That's brilliant. You break people up and divide and conquer. It's a colonization tactic. But I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to do everything I can within the realm of possibility to stop you. Because I don't want my child or my nephew or nieces paying for this facility when we need to look at how do we stop putting people in prison or in jail. And building a large facility and funneling all of that money in there and not addressing the corruption, the leadership that is not Chris Johnston writing it. It's Department of Justice. It's all of these outside agencies and people who are in there that say that's going on. And again, Prime example, the young lady who had to put her baby in a trash can. You guys are documented on it. We'll try to cover stuff up.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Next up is the consent docket. There are 3 items on the agenda that can be taken as one motion. There are the minutes of the last meeting, the invoices and claims list, and the financial report. Are there any items that any of the trustees would like to pull from the consent docket? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent docket?
Adoption.
We have a motion, second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Tommy Johnson,
Yes.
Chad Alexander,
Yes.
Ben Brown,
Yes.
Kevin Calvey,
Yes.
M.T. Berry,
Yes.
Joe Alba,
Yes, ma'am.
Jim Couch.
Yes. The motion carries. The next item on the agenda is a report by our Chief Executive, Greg Williams, and I think today he's assisted by Paula Williams.
We're actually working on a technology issue, so I'd recommend that Mr. Tartabono jump ahead of us if it's okay with the trustees.
If there's no objection from the trustees, let's put this item back and go with item number 6, which is a presentation by Tim Tartabono.
Good afternoon, everyone. Okay. It's good to be here again. Every year, the CJAC comes before, since you all have been constituted, to provide our annual report. And again, the Oklahoma County Criminal Justice Advisory Council is a creation of Oklahoma County, Oklahoma City, Edmond, and Midwest City through a cooperative agreement specifically focused on the justice system. And as I talk about the justice system, I say there's really 2 mountains that we're climbing on. One is the detention center, the jail, the infrastructure, the procedures, and then the other is the legal side, the judiciary, the courts, the law enforcement partners. And so we try to give an overview each year of the various things that are going on and to give the public some insights on the trends that we're seeing from a system perspective. You all only play a piece of that role in the overall system, and I think sometimes we lose sight of the fact that you're only one of the players. There are other players in this game, and so we try to highlight some of these issues. So, okay. And just as a reminder, the CJAC was created really as a recommendation by the Vera Institute for Justice when they came in to do a review in 2015, 16, and 17. Their very first recommendation was to create oversight and accountability mechanisms for the local justice system, and their recommendation was a CJAC type body. In other parts of the country, they're called Criminal Justice Coordinating Councils, and usually they're not advisory in other parts of the country. They are actually a policy-making body. That wasn't the way we decided to go here, and so the CJAC provides recommendations. So this year of 2020 to 2021, the fiscal year is July 1 to July 1. And obviously it's been a very difficult year for these justice reforms to continue to be pushed through. From 2018 to 19, I really felt like the system was moving forward. The different players were working well together, and then the pandemic really interrupted that and set us on our heels a little bit. And I feel like we're just now getting to the point where the players are coming back together and we're moving forward. So the challenges that you all faced as a trust have been well documented, taking over in the middle of the pandemic, and then having to deal with how do you control that within the facility, and then also the labor shortage that is well known all over the country, and not including here in Oklahoma County and Oklahoma City. But one of the biggest highlights is that a lot of the work and a lot of the advocacy that people have done at the legislature on mental health and substance abuse issues, policy changes are now also matching funding changes. And so where we've had a legislature that has been interested in changing the dynamics related to mental health care, substance misuse care, now they are writing checks to match those policy initiatives. And we see that as a very important and substantial sign to where our local county justice system is going to go in the future. Before I get into those specific funding issues related to the legislature, I want to just point out on page 3, it's sort of hard to see here, but the progress that has been made, the number of arrestees detained in the jail by gender is actually starting to decline. In 2016, when the Vera Institute was here, that number was 27%. So we've made a reduction in the number of women we're holding. And I always like to emphasize, when we think of women incarcerated, we should be thinking about mothers that are incarcerated, because the vast majority of the women that are incarcerated are mothers. And so then you start looking at the negative fallout to family stability when you have a mother that's incarcerated. And so that's a sign of progress that we've been able to track because of the Vera Institute's numbers, and then we've been able to keep that going throughout the last 3 years. But the legislature's funding that has occurred, the focus has been on providing alternatives. And so they have passed several bills, one specifically related to allowing alternative transport of people that are dealing with mental health crisis in the face of law enforcement interactions. Law enforcement now has the tool to transport those individuals to a mental health crisis center and not use the police or law enforcement, the sheriff's squad car. A mobile transport is provided that is unmarked and is more considerate of the individual having the mental health episode, and then they're taken to a crisis center where they can be stabilized. To go with that policy position, the legislature funded $2 million to allow those transports to occur. They provided $7.5 million for additional urgent care and crisis centers, and these are in addition to the 2 and 3 that are allocated in MAPS 4. So it may not be exactly in Oklahoma County that this $7.5 million gets deployed, but we believe it will be somewhere in the central Oklahoma region. And so it will further enhance our ability to divert people from the jail and from their entry into the jail. One of the other innovations has been iPads that go with the law enforcement officers. When they're having that interaction, they're able to bring in online through video a mental health provider to help with that de-escalation. Again, another effort on trying to reduce those interactions that turn out to be harmful between law enforcement and mental health. And then $500,000 for 2 other pieces that are important. Oklahoma County will be one of the sites for the medical assisted treatment for opioid and alcohol dependence, to help step people down through medication when they are in these crises. And then more expansion of crisis intervention training, $500,000 for that. So it's encouraging as a system-wide look to see that the legislature has recognized this, and not just as a policy directive, but also matching funding related to that. The next story is one that You all are very familiar with the facility subcommittee led by Trustee Arnall and Dan Strawn of the Homeless Alliance. Really pushed the CJAC through an effort to look at the facility and to come up with recommendations on what the new facility, and you all are familiar with that. But I want to highlight a few things out of that FSB study that really underpins what we were driving for as we were doing the study and developing those recommendations from CJAC. At the very top of why the recommendations came out the way they did was the necessary ability to provide better medical, mental health care, and generally better conditions for the residents and the staff that are best going to be accomplished in a new modern facility that meets ACA guidelines. And second, related to that, is that there are just certain requirements from DOJ and the health department that simply require a better facility. There are certain things in that facility that just can't be fixed to match what DOJ and the health department want accomplished, and only a better facility will do that. And the analysis economically was that renovation did not make sense, and that the new facility, better facility, was the way to go. But at underlining that through the facilities subcommittee was clearly the ability to care for residents and staff in that facility, and your all's ability to comply with those federal and state agencies is only going to be exponentially enhanced by a better facility. As we looked in the different pieces of what a new facility required, especially related to COVID-19 mitigation that the federal government is looking at. The intake area, I just was there last week on another tour. It is too crowded. It is too much like a maze, and there is simply no ability to properly distance or configure settings to keep people separated. And the addition that we have in the new facility is to bring all of our diversion partners into that intake area. So the screenings that are necessary to get into their programs will be done at the upfront outset, not later on once they've already been booked in. And so our ability to mitigate COVID by preventing them from coming in at the beginning after a screening will increase exponentially in a new facility. I think it's important to also recognize that in those 5 recommendations was the focus that your all's administration as the trust has embraced, which is moving people into appropriate levels of mental health, substance misuse, and medical care. And with those diversion programs, we are blessed in Oklahoma County to have numerous diversion programs, everything from a drug court program to community sentencing, to smaller programs like Veterans Court and Mental Health Treatment Court. All those pieces go together to get us to what we've seen over the last 3 years. And so I'm going to flip back to page 10. As we talk about statistics and trend lines, we've been measuring those trend lines now for 3 years. And if you look at page 10, you will see that the jail population has steadily declined. And if you look at when that drop occurred, you can go back to years like June 30, 2004, when the population was 2,617, or June 30, even just 2015, when the population was 2,468. When Vera came in 2016, you started the decline to see the decline. The 2017 June 30 was 2,237. And then as we've been able to start tracking that on a daily basis, the yearly averages have consistently been under 1,700, with the exception of last year due to COVID. And if you look at the bottom, the blue chart, the blue graph section, are the number of DOC residents that we have in the detention center. Pre-COVID, that October 2019 number was about 100. It went up initially, and then during the height of COVID, we had nearly 500 DOC residents in the jail because they were not able to accept receptions from county jails, and so they stopped that process. And so the backup statewide was measurable. Coming out of that, we've not been able to get back under that 100 number that we had pre-COVID, and we've really settled in that 218 range. That number continues to be what we have even just last week. But what we know, because we've been tracking this number, is that when the facilities subcommittee arrives at 1,800 or 950 housing units to hold up to 1,800 people, we know that that size is what fits the population we have now and what we've had over the last 3 years. And so there is clear trend lines, data to support what the facilities subcommittee recommended. Okay, so going back to the so after the facilities subcommittee, the next highlight is what we call our justice champions and a historic election. We are blessed that we have had real heroes that have worked in this justice system in Oklahoma County over the last 3-5 years as this effort has continued. And so we highlight 3 of them. Midwest City Police Chief Brandon Claves, who served on the CJAC from Midwest City, who then left to go to Cleat. But he was very instrumental in bringing new efforts of policing at Midwest City related to mental health, substance abuse misuse, and bringing in a mental health a professional from the Department of Mental Health embedded within the police department to give them the focus on a regular basis. And we felt it was important to highlight Chief Claves' work. You all are well familiar with Tricia's work, Chairman Everest. And then Kat Burton, who is now Judge Kat Burton. And as an attorney, I always like to remind myself to call them Judge Burton. But I knew her when she was Kat Burton. And she was very involved in the CJAC representing the district attorney's office. And I think it's important that we recognize the role that people like Kat and other attorneys in the district attorney's office that are in these treatment courts and these diversion programs. The judges, Judge Stoner, Judge Elliott, other judges, Judge Trong, that are involved in trying to put individuals into programs so they can get the help and the care they need. It does take a team of people working together, and we've had great partners in our law enforcement community and our judiciary community, and they should be commended. The encouraging thing is that we know diversion works, and we know that diversion equals public safety. These people are not just being released. These people are having a evidence-based screening that occurs that tells us what programs they're eligible for. And then the courts and the DA's office and the public defender's office or the private defense bar come together and determine the eligibility and the entrance into those programs, and then they're monitored on a regular basis through the court system. So as we hear the noise nationally, and even as we get into primary election season about justice reform and violent offenders being let out, that is not what we're talking about. Diversion programs work. They increase public safety. And you can go talk to Judge Stoner in drug court and watch those daily court activities occur. And you see that these people are being held accountable. And when they fail, they end up in the Department of Corrections. And that's the bargain. That's the deal. And our judges, our lawyers in the DA's office, the lawyers in the public defender's office are working to keep that accountability going. And it's important that we recognize that good diversion programs like we have in Oklahoma County equals public safety. And then a historic election in Oklahoma County to elect our sheriff. Congratulations again. And you all know the great work he's done already. And I just want to really appreciate the way he's put things out there as to what he intended to do. Body cameras, alternatives, encouraging alternatives, Captain Bradley's appointment to do those mental health transports and interactions. And so he's lived up to what he said he would do in the campaign, and we appreciate the sheriff for that. The next piece, again, the larger perspective, policing reform. Oklahoma City, the mayor and the city manager recognized the moment that occurred after the tragedy of George Floyd, and they jumped right into what should we do about our policing practices. And they brought together a broad group of people, 45 people for the mayor's task force and about 16 people for the city manager's working group. And they looked at everything, and they brought in a nationally reputable firm, the 21st Century Policing, that was birthed out of previous federal efforts to do police reform. And what did they find out? Several things that you're going to hear over the next coming months in the new year, in the first quarter of the new year, I believe. The focus very clearly was on de-escalation. What can our law enforcement partners do better to enhance their ability to de-escalate situations, especially with substance abuse, mental health crisis that are going on? And that was where the chief of police had already talked about the alternative responses they were implementing, and that they are still open to expanding with healthcare and behavioral healthcare providers in Oklahoma City. And so they will continue to do that. And then one of the most important changes that you'll see is that the Citizens Advisory Board that currently, in my opinion, serving on the task force is anemic, disorganized, and not well connected to the public. The Citizens Advisory Board is going to have a full revamp. And I think you will see a advisory board that is more responsive to the public, but also will have, when these critical incidents happen, that the police have to have serious use of force or even lethality. You will see this Citizen Advisory Board have a much more public role. And I think as citizens, we will feel more notified and brought into the process of what the police is doing on discipline in those areas. Those three issues really came out strongly through that process, and I have to commend the city manager, the mayor, and the police chief for their willingness to not become defensive and push back the way other places in our country did, but they really embraced the oversight and the sunshine and made those changes. And they were led, both of those groups were led by a stellar former city manager and former police chief that shall remain nameless, but you all might know who he is. And so then, of course, we have to talk about the trust authority and the work that you all did over the last year in incredibly difficult circumstances. And so taking your all's public information that was out there, we went through and highlighted the things that show the progress being made. There's a lot of ways to measure whether you all are making progress. But here are some of those that I think, as we looked at this pre-trust, these were things that came up over and over again as to ways that we could improve the care of the residents and the staff at the jail that we wanted previous sheriffs to do. Increased time spent out of the cell by 20%. Again, I was at a tour just last week. Some pastors and some other people were there. And when we go into the area where we see the camera, I was amazed at how many areas had people out in the day room at the same time, which means you all are increasing the staffing levels, because years ago when I would go on those tours, we'd be lucky, frankly, to have one or two pods that were out. On Thursday, when I was there with pastors, there had to be at least 6 or 7 that were out. And so I've seen that this is actually happening. The renovations of numerous cells that were inoperable. This time we went to a cell, a pod, where the work had not been done. And it reminded me of how bad the conditions were in some of these situations. One of the most striking things that when I walked into that pod that was being worked on was the new locks were missing. The locks had not been installed on this floor that was having maintenance. And I had to ask the staff to take me to a pod where the new locks were there, so the pastors could see the difference between the old locks that we know were unsafe, led to inmate on inmate violence, made it difficult for staff to care for their individuals. They were a mess. And then we went to the new locks where the lights are on. You can see green if it's working, red if it's not working. And the pastors could see the difference in security. If you're a resident there, and so you know you're protected, you're not suspect to people breaking out of their cell and coming into your cell, or the staff, that they know when they walk onto a pod at 2 a.m. in the morning and all the green lights are on, they know that's a safe pod. And that's a visible feeling the difference when you're in that pod with the new locks versus the pod when you're not. And then, of course, the water systems that was in the new pod and not in the old pod that you all now have put in. The system that controls the flooding and the ability for residents to move contraband from floor to floor through those the toilet facilities, which is, it sounds like a spy movie, but we know that happens all the time. The way they were able to run that from top to bottom. I think this is really one of the important things: instituting child welfare visits and visitations, so that family members that are incarcerated can have video visits with their children, especially when DHS is involved and there's a court ability for that parent to have an interaction with their child. We know the negative, devastating implications of incarceration on children. We know our ACE scores are poor in Oklahoma, and incarcerated parents is one of those things that contribute to negative ACE scores. And so the ability that you all have had through Greg and William and Mac to focus on video visitation for children that are involved in DHS settings and parents to have that. And I have to say that there have been other situations that are frankly heart-wrenching when we know that people that are losing a family member are given the opportunity to have a video hospice call with that loved one before they pass away. You can't measure that in statistics. But the change of the focus on the humane treatment and the humane care, those things, those video visits don't show up in a DOJ or a health department report, but I don't know how we can measure that any more than the feeling that has for that resident and for that child that is otherwise separated from that parent. And then you all are aware the staff increases in pay, the training hours, and then the pest control. You all know how much you're spending on that. And again, talking about a better facility, a facility that is designed for that prevention of those issues and to make it easier to clean, easier to keep rodents and pests out of it. You all know the infrastructure challenges and it will be easier to comply with those requirements in a new facility than in the current facility. And then on page 9, I talk about, furthermore, each month, the Trust Authority provides financial reports, maintenance reports, contract renewal reviews, and other progress reports at public meetings. Such accountability and transparency was one of the critical rationales for creating the Trust Authority. When I started this job in February 2018, one of the first questions that came to me was, are the commissioners going to create a trust? And I said, I don't know. Let's figure it out. Well, the county was already, in February of 2018, having trust meetings where they were reviewing a draft of a trust that they had organized, and they were going through regular meetings to decide whether that was going to happen. Because we were in a sort of lame duck status, the two commissioners that were rolling off didn't advance that. But the idea of a trust is not new. And if you go back to the documents, going all the way back to the 90s when these committees were created, a trust was called for more than 20 years ago. And finally, that action was taken, and you all are here. But one of the critical pieces that went into the creation of the trust was this transparency and accountability, where the commissioners, the budget board, felt like the sheriffs, whether it was true or not, the perception was reality, that the sheriffs were not sharing enough financial, programmatic, and policy information with the other county elected officials, and they wanted more. They wanted improvements. And the trust was seen as the only way to accomplish that. And that was now accomplished every month when you all provide that accountability, that transparency, the reports, and frankly, a place to have public comment. I don't recall any other sheriff that was regularly setting up shop on a monthly basis and saying, public, come in and tell me how I'm doing. Public, come in and tell me what ideas you have to improve how I'm running the detention center. That may have happened. I was never aware of that, and I was never told that that occurred ahead of time. And so just this forum is an improvement in the level of accountability and transparency that is going on. And then as we closed the last year and you all are shifting to this year, we wanted to include the goals that that you all created for next year. And as I look at these, I believe strongly that anyone in Oklahoma County that reads the trust's goals for FY fiscal year 22 would be able to say that, yes, I agree with them. Yes, that's the direction I want my county to go. Yes, as a citizen, I'm proud that these are the goals for it. And I'm going to go through some of them because they're critical. Eliminate triple selling. That's been a long-term problem. That may be a previous goal that other sheriffs had, but it's never been laid out this way and with a plan that goes with it on how to reduce that. And we know that triple selling is one of the problems that both the Department of Justice and the Health Department have highlighted. So that's there. Improve safety and security. Increase staffing levels. Again, we're in a labor shortage, and you all have had some measurable success on bringing in new people. And as I walk around with that staff last week, they're professional, they're helpful, they were responsive to the pastor's questions. And I asked one of them, she was there 13 years. I said, a decade ago, there was 1,000 more people in this facility. How do you do it? And she said, well, back then, the level of tension was so much higher in the facility because safety was a problem. the fear of inmate on inmate violence, inmate staff violence was real, and so it made you tense all the time, and it made all the residents tense all the time. And she said, so in this new setting where we've got a lower population, we have an increased focus on security. It's a little bit easier to work there. Is it the Shangri-La? Obviously not. But at least from her perspective, having been there 13 years, she can enjoy doing her professional work a little bit better because of the improvements that were made. And then one of the pastors behind me pulled her aside and said, you don't have to answer this question. Why do you do it? This is a very hard job. Why do you do it? And she said, I love people. I love taking care of people. And I want both the staff and the residents to be well taken care of in this facility. And I think that's the kind of dedication that I've seen numerous times as I've been in there more than 30 times giving public tours. And I think those are why we need to focus on accomplishing these goals, making sure that pay continues to be competitive, and that safety continues to excel. And then just the last thing I would say is that I think for you all going forward into this new year, how do you accomplish these goals? And also, how do you take those recommendations from the action committee and how do you make those fully implementable? And that's where CJAC comes in. We are a resource for you. We have subcommittees. We like to break off into working groups to solve specific problems. We have the ability to bring in experts from all over Oklahoma County or all over the state to help advise us on how to accomplish that. And so we would just leave it as if there are specific accomplishments of those recommendations or in these FY22 goals, we're happy to assist and provide you that assistance as necessary.
Thank you, Tim. Are there any questions for Tim? We appreciate the work that you do and the work that CJAC does. And thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.
We're ready to go. We will go now back to item 5 and receive a report by Chief Executive Officer Greg Williams, who's presenting this morning with Paula Williams. That would be a really good thing to do. Item 6 did have an action item that I glossed right over. So would there be a motion to approve the presentation by
Motion.
to receive the report? Yes.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Would you call the roll, please?
Tommy Johnson,
Yes.
Loretta Radford, Chad Alexander,
Yes.
Ben Brown,
Yes.
Kevin Calvey,
Yes.
MC Berry,
Yes.
Joe Albaugh,
Yes, ma'am.
and Jim Couch.
Yes. The motion passes. Thank you for keeping me on track. And with that, Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I've put together this presentation really for a couple of things. One is so we can go back and we can really look at what progress that we have made as a trust and as a jail staff in such a short amount of time, during a pandemic. And the other thing, I just wanted to be able to update you on really some of the things, if you haven't seen it, to give you an update really on some of the highlights of what's been accomplished. Really, I want to encourage you guys to ask questions as we go through this presentation. If you have comments, then please share those as we go through. So with that being said, I brought Paula Williams with me. She's no relation to me or John, but again, Williams is a very common name. But she has come with us. She is an attorney with Gable Gottwalls, and she's going to help me do some of the presentation. Paula.
And I'm going to go ahead and keep talking while they're pulling our slides up. We've got copies of the slides in the back. And if we have any trouble, I've got hard copies for everyone, and we can do it that way. But I wanted to start today, and thank you, Greg, for letting me tag team this with you today. Perfect. Great. We can click over to the second slide. So I wanted to start today by addressing the health department report. Oh, I got it. The health department report, the latest one that we got at the end of October. Well, we received the report in November. The inspection happened at the end of October. So many of you know that the health department returned to the facility over the course of 3 days and they inspected the facility from top to bottom. They went in almost every single cell. Now, Greg and his team are meeting regularly, just like they did in response to the other health department reports, and they're currently developing a response plan to implement to address anything in that report. So because that response is not due until January, we can't address every single thing today, but we're going to address a number of the things that you might see in that report. And then, of course, when we do respond, when the trust responds, you will have that response available to you. And I know that Greg will make himself available in January to answer any other questions the trust has. I think today's presentation is going to be a great reminder of where this trust started and how far it has come in regards to many of the issues that you'll see. But today we're going to start with some of the familiar statistics that you will typically receive from Greg. So let's talk briefly about releasing and booking. I'm excited to report that once again, more persons in custody were released last month in November than were booked. We had a total of 3,541 people who came in or left the facility in November. One day last week, the head count was 1,617, which is getting awful close down into those 1,500 numbers. That equates to an astonishing over 179,000 meals served just in the month of November. And I want to remind the trustees that because of the contract with Summit that you all approved before you took operation of the facility in July 2020, these meals look radically different. And so let's just walk back into the past for just a moment to remember what it was like and then where we are now. So these are photos of the kitchen and what it was like just before you arrived and when you did arrive. So food was served in largely in styrofoam. The top right picture is a photograph of the freezer at the detention center. Now, I don't know how big it is on your screens, but you don't have to look hard to see several inches of freezer burn. And you all can imagine what that food was like inside if that's what the outside of the boxes looked like. The bottom left is just a picture of some of the mold in the kitchen. And the bottom right is the burners, but when you all came in July 2020, or before you took operation in July 2020, only 2 out of those 6 worked. This is what things look like now. And you are familiar with what it looks like now because you've been there, but we've got new trays that are used to serve the food, new burners, new stoves. It's cleaned up. Summit has a crew of 13 that work around the clock to get 179,000 meals served in the course of a month. And I want to quickly address hot meals because over the course of the last 18 months, you all have heard a lot of diverse opinions on how things should be done, what else could be done. But I think it's important to remember what I think everyone who has ever stepped foot at one of these meetings would agree on. And I think hot meals is one of them. We all want inmates to receive hot meals. But we also know that the structural problems with this building go back decades. The fact that Summit's staff and Greg's staff has to get hot food out of the bottom of a 13-story building and then physically get it up and out and all over a 13-story building creates structural difficulties to that process. It takes more staff to provide hot meals than it would at a different facility with a different layout. COVID-19, you guys have never operated the jail when you weren't in a global pandemic. You don't know what it's like to operate the detention center outside of a global pandemic. You all have had staffing shortages, just like nearly every industry in the United States. You all have had staff go out on quarantine and be in isolation so that you can keep COVID numbers as low as possible inside the detention center. And those efforts, combined with some of the maintenance efforts and upgrades that Greg's going to speak to, those have worked. Since July, there have been 8,940 tests, And last Thursday, there was just one active case among inmates or staff. And I can actually tell you that as of this morning, I learned that that one active case is the only positive in the last 14 days. So I think my kid's daycare has more active cases than that. All right, so Greg, I'm going to pass it to you because you know the maintenance better than anyone.
Slides for me.
Sure.
The picture on the left, of course, is is part of the old ventilation system that was in place when we took over. And the picture on the right, of course, is a new coil. That's a picture of a coil. And again, I'm not going to go into great detail, but the air circulation system is quite complicated at the jail. But essentially, you have fresh air coming in. You have pumps and you have circulating fans that circulate the air once it gets in. Then you have these coils that actually heat and cool the air. And we took over in July. There was really very little air coming into the jail. And again, those were dampers that had to be manually opened, and then we'd open them, and then the coils would freeze up or burn up. So there's lots of trouble with that. There was very little air being circulated inside the jail, and that was being circulated, of course, was stagnant air that had come in and was staying inside the jail. So we put in, the county commissioners gave us money of CARES fund, and you guys approved those expenditures, but we have been able to replace those systems, and this is just a picture that just shows you where it was at before and where it's at today. And part of that circulation, I should go on, part of that circulation system, we added an O2 prime system, really, which is a state-of-the-art technology that purifies that air inside the ductwork. So again, not only are we just recirculating hot and cold air as we should, but we're actually purifying that air to take care of a lot of the COVID and other airborne pathogens that are part of that. Thank you. The plumbing, again, these pictures kind of represent the common day. And again, we've all had flooding in our house. Once in every 10 years, we'll have a problem. Well, this is a typical day at the detention center. And again, when I first came there, I bought boots because, again, I found out real quick you can't walk around that jail without really going home with wet socks every day. And I say that is actually the reality of the matter. These are everyday pictures that was common, and people that have visited that jail, worked in that jail in the past, can attest to that. As you can see, this is the basement. It's full of water. Our dry storage area, I've got pictures of our dry storage area that are nearly 2 foot deep in water. And again, I don't know how you call it a dry storage when it's full of water, but that was the case. So again, we have made great effort. Again, we have made great effort in addressing a lot of that. As you can see, it took a lot of staff even to mop up the water, to clean up the water. And then when the air doesn't circulate, you have stagnant air and moldy air, and it was just a horrible situation. There's a picture of a bathtub here. That was that was actually in medical, and you can see the waste that had back up in that tub. And again, it was just it was hazardous and really just unusable. So those are just, and again, I didn't go through and pick out the worst pictures. Those are just common pictures of every day. You can see the ceiling tile were missing, the stains in where the water had dripped down through the ceiling. And again, that's an ongoing battle. That entire jail is drop recessed ceiling. So anytime you have a water leak or anytime you have a pipe burst or even common kind of maintenance issues, you run tile. But again, I can assure you that is not the way it looks today. This is a picture of one of our sewage grinders. And again, when I took over, and I've got pictures that could just really make you almost throw up. But what would happen was that this grinder would get clogged up, and it would get, some of the detainees will flush sheets and clothes and mattresses and just everything you can imagine as part of that. And these grinders would get clogged up, and when it did, then that would back up into the jail. And of course, it'd go into the basement first, and then it would eventually back up even to the 13th floor, as we just saw in that bathtub. So it's very important that we get rid of wastewater as efficiently as possible. And these grinders were added. And we also put a grinder in the bypass. So now if the main grinder gets clogged or fails for some reason, we can put it on a bypass, and it's ground as well. So we have a backup, a redundancy system to help that from happening. And we have 2 of these, one on each side of the building.
You all haven't had floods since.
We have not had a major flood since we got these grinders in place. So again, it could happen. I'm not saying it couldn't happen, but we have not had a major flood.
Mr. Williams? Yeah, when I came about 2 months ago, at that time, before you put this grinder system in place, as I understood it, you were having a backup about every 2 weeks. And at that time, you had not had one since.
Yeah.
Have we still at this point not had one since? Because it would have been, going from every 2 weeks to now to it would be 7 months.
That's right.
That's exactly right. And again, when we say backup, that kind of gets overlooked. When you're actually in that facility, like the elevator shaft is the lowest point in the jail, and that thing would be full of water and wastewater. And again, all the water that floods, whether it starts on the 13th, will end up in the basement in those elevator shafts and running out that back door. So it is problematic, not just for where the flooding takes place, but for every floor of that building below where that flood takes place. So I appreciate that. Yes, sir. This is a picture of our hot water system. And again, hot water is a huge piece of COVID, and sanitizing and sterilizing is not only humane and really the proper way of doing things, but really you need to wash your hands, and you need to be able to wash your body and wash the floors and wash the sheets and wash the bedding. And especially up in the medical floor and the higher floors, we're having a difficult time getting hot water. In fact, the plant had a hard time creating hot water. The boilers were essentially rusted out. And as the water was being heated and stored, it would actually run out of the tanks and run out the back door. And again, that had gone on for, and again, I know what I was told, and it's been many years that had happened. I know there was a stream that was full of algae about 3 foot wide and about 6 inches deep. So it did look like it had been going on for quite a while. Again, we, as a collective group, were able to fix that. We went in and replaced those hot water tanks with these on-demand tankless hot water heaters. They're more efficient, and they provide adequate water, hot water to those floors. We added pumps, and we added booster pumps and other ways to get that hot water not out of the basement, but all the way up to the 13th floor. So today I am pleased that there's adequate hot water throughout the jail. Again, that's not to say that some of the pipes don't break. That doesn't say that every cell, every day has full hot water, because that's just almost, a big challenge to keep every faucet hot, as you can imagine. But again, there are systems in place that are fully functional that do that. Our water bill when I took over was average about $50,000 a month, and right now we're doing less than $8,000 is really what our water bill is running right now. So you can see it was a lot of waste of water, a lot of waste in energy to heat that water and to store that water, and we weren't getting to use it. So really this has been kind of a full response to a lot of issues that we've had. This is an air duct, again, that went to the dryer in the old laundry system. And again, you can see the lint that had backed up, and from your own house and from your own experience, when the vent does not bring the hot air out or exhaust that hot air, then your clothes don't get dry. When your clothes don't get dry, then they turn gray and they musty, and it just adds to that entire kind of a quandrum that we've had. So we went in as part of the CARES funds. We went in, we redesigned and we re-engineered those vents. And again, the picture on the right is an illustration of what those new vents look like. And again, it's not only safer, and it's not only does a better job with drying, it's more efficient, and really it just lets that equipment work like it should. Bug abatement, we have talked a lot about that. And again, it is an issue that we see in the media and that we are very familiar with. Again, my staff struggle with that. We don't want to work in a building that's full of bugs, bed bugs or roaches or anything like that. So the staff and the detainees are entitled to having a building that is pest-free. We take great pride in the work that we have done. We've partnered with Orkin, and we've partnered with other agencies that provide us chemical that we use to do that. Right now, we have over the last couple of months, we've started a bed bug abatement on the 2nd floor, and we're working our way up, and we finished the 8th floor this Saturday. We got through with the 8th floor, so we'll start on 10 next weekend. And really, that's 2 treatments. We'll treat it, and 7 days later, we come in and treat it again. So we've been from 2 to 10. We're getting ready to start on 10. But in addition to that, we do routine. We spend about $8,000 a month right now on bed bug spray, about $8,000 a month doing that. And I think we're making good progress with that. This is a bed bug containment shed. Again, when you fight bed bugs, it's more than just spraying. Killing bed bugs takes a lot more than just spray. It's how you manage property. It's how you manage clothes. It's how you manage the mattresses. It's how you clean things, how you sanitize things. And one of the things that we know does kill bed bugs and does kill larvae. And one of the things that we know does kill bed bugs and does kill larvae. It's very well documented. Again, it's plumbed with intense heat. So we can put mattresses or other bulky items that are hard to, that harbor bugs or could potentially harbor a bug. We put them in that, turn the heat up, let it set for 90 minutes or more. And it's a way for us to sand the mattresses.
Greg, before I step in, Are there dead bed bugs at the jail?
Yeah. There are, and again, I was asked that, there was a story in the paper on the news or something about somebody had sent home some dead bed bugs, and I got questioned about that, and they were alarmed that there were dead bed bugs. And I'm just telling you, if we're spending $8,000 a month to kill bugs, I hope the hell we're killing bugs.
Don't get too comfortable. All right, I'm not going to stay on triple selling for long because you already heard about triple selling from Tim just a few minutes ago. But, I think it's important to remember that you all do not control how many people come to the detention center on any given day. You don't control how long they stay, and you don't control when they're released. And so when we talk about the population of the detention center, it's always a good number to be aware of, but it's largely out of you all's control. But these two pictures really go towards what Tim was talking about inoperable cells. Dale Fry and his team. Dale is someone that Greg brought on from county to who was very familiar with the building and what needed to be done. And these are pictures of the kinds of inoperable cells that predated the trust. Problems like this have existed for decades, and you all are well aware of those. Debris, again, this is just an example of, I think something we can all agree on is, do we want trash picked up at the detention center? Yes, we want trash picked up. On any given day, is there trash on the floor somewhere? I'm confident there is. To get every single trash picked up, we're going to need to make sure we have enough staff, and we're going to have to make sure that we have all the other issues taken care of so that we have time to pick up trash. But this is what it was like when you all came in. Greg's team came in, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the pods didn't even have trash cans. So if there aren't, right, Greg? That's right. Yeah, so if there aren't even trash cans, where's the trash going? Well, Greg and his team got to largely pick all of it up. And I'll end my part of this, and then Greg's going to just quickly tell you some of the more exciting things that are happening now. Commissioner Mon toured this facility at the end of October, just before the health department's latest inspection. And when he toured, it was his 21st tour of the facility. He tours annually. And he noted overall an absence of hostility, an increased amount of time outside of cells. And this is a quote from an article that he published in the Oklahoman that said, from the top to bottom, the Oklahoma County Jail is a cleaner, safer place than it has ever been. Commissioner Calvi, you have echoed similar sentiments in the last couple months. And I want you all to know that I disagree with anyone that says that this jail trust is not making good faith efforts to bring this facility into compliance to the extent that it is possible in that building and to make it the cleanest and the safest place that we can. And Greg, I'll let you finish up.
Okay. Thank you, Paul. We go to that next slide. Some of the ongoing issues at the facility, of course, can be cured or at least assisted with additional staff. And again, I've got with my lead team members, and I've told them we cannot totally and continually complain about having no staff, because we've got a job to do that we have to get done regardless of how many staff we have there. So it's not an excuse, but certainly we could provide more and better services with additional staff. You guys are very much aware of what we have been able to do. We've increased the salaries and we've increased starting pay for nearly everybody that works at the detention center. We've implemented career progressions, to give staff where they can come in at one level, but they can, with hard work and dedication and commitment, they can move up the scale so they can progress in their career. And again, we think that's very important, that we want people to be able to have a career and to look forward to tomorrow and the next year and the next year and have growing and opportunities at the center. But again, you guys have done a lot of that, and we have done very good work in making sure that people can make the jail a career and give them a path so that they can stay there and want to stay there. We just gave our year-end bonus to staff. That came out last Friday, and staff were very appreciative. And they wanted me to tell you guys, thank you very much for that. It did mean a lot to them this time of the year, and I think that has gone very well. We did that in a way to reward staff that have stuck through us through the pandemic and through these hard times that we've all had as a nation and as a county. And we wanted to recognize that, and we think it'll help with retention. And many of them have shared that with me even during the last week. So they wanted me to say thanks for that. There's some security gates that we've put in. Again, the gates have not worked at the detention center for a number of years. And that can be a big deal for the staff. We've had vehicles vandalized. We've had county vehicles vandalized. We've had personal vehicles vandalized. In this particular area where the jail is located, has a lot of foot traffic day and night. And it's important to us to have a secured parking lot just to protect our vehicles. The gates will also protect the building, at least parts of the building that are encompassed by that gate. This is right here where this picture is at, is a big spot for contraband drops. That's a D cell or D tower, which is where a lot of our harder headed kind of inmates are housed in that D pod. And that's where a lot of that contraband comes in. So shutting these gates will help us with control of contraband, control of access to the building. It'll help protect our property. So we're excited about getting those gates operational. This is the electronic locking mechanisms. And again, the picture on the top is really the older locks, and the pictures on the bottom are the newer locks. And again, I was going to correct Tim Tartabono. He said when it was red, it wasn't working. No, when it's red, it's unlocked. So again, in my world, that means it is working. It's just locked and unlocked. So again, when they're red, that doesn't mean they're not working. It just means that they're unlocked. So I wanted to clarify that just a little bit. Really, when I started looking at, when we started coming into the jail, they had told us that the locks didn't work. And really, when you walk around and you look at that, it's not the lock not working. The door's falling off. There's no hinges that actually secure the door to the frame, and the frames are warped. The frames are rotted out. They're rusted out. So it's much more than a lock. It's a door frame. It's a door hinge. It's the door. It's a locking mechanism. So the county commissioners this last year gave us some money to refurbish those doors and hinges and replace about 400 locks, and we have got that done. In fact, that job will probably be finished today or tomorrow. That company was very intent on getting out of here this week, and I'm thinking they're probably going to be done today. And again, with these new locks that we installed this year, you can open them now with a key, or you can open them from a centralized control panel, which is really how the system was designed. So we're excited about the new locks. Anyway, that concludes our presentation. I appreciate your attentiveness. Is there any questions or comments?
Questions for Ben?
I have a couple, Greg, if I might. But before that, Greg, the transparency that is now brought. I know it started with CJAC, I guess, and their desire, but it seems to me that this whole system is trustworthy. Anybody can look at anything at any time and be assured that they're getting correct information. Now, just having said that, that just kind of come up after that last little bit. But on the COVID issue, COVID is on the increase. The report today, or the last 3 days, was 3,300 new cases in Oklahoma, 68 new deaths, and you've got it. It's now down to one positive at the jail. Is that right?
I have one detainee. I do have 4 employees.
Okay.
So again, I do appreciate what you're saying. COVID is very active and very alive in the community, and we are still at risk. So yes.
Okay, we are at risk, but in another sense, it's almost an island there that you have, the people who have been there just a little bit have, many of them, most of them maybe, have been vaccinated. My question is, are those vaccines still offered to everybody who comes in, and are they available?
Yes, they are. They're available at no charge to any detainee or any staff person that desires to have one.
Okay, that's good. Now, just to go back for a second, the health department report, our response is due in January. Is that correct?
Yes.
And
typically those responses are due 90 days after the report is received, and that's when that would be. Yes, sir.
Okay, so while we're all having holiday dinners with our families or doing whatever we do, I guess you and William Mundy and others will be working down there. Is that right?
That's right.
And
Yeah,
you,
and really, we start fixing deficiencies as the inspection is even going on. And even you can look at the report, and even in the report, it'll say, you know, it was noted that there was a paper cup in the hallway, but that cup was picked up during the inspection. So even in the report itself, it alleges that, you know, we start corrective action immediately.
okay. Well, I just want to observe, you know, you guys are there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We come periodically and hear a report and oversee what you're doing. But you and your staff are doing the work. And I just want you to know that as a member of the trust, who sometimes gets blamed for things that aren't our fault, the good things that have happened have been because you guys have worked your little fingers to the bone to make it happen. And I want you to know that I'm grateful to you and your staff and the work that's done over there.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that jail never closes. And again, people look at that and it's like, you know, we process 3,500 people a month that come in and go out of that jail, and those doors never stop moving. So it is a high traffic, a high intense area to work, and staff are there, like you say, they're there all the time.
I'd like just, oh, go ahead. Okay, I was going to say, first of all, I want to, you know, piggybacking on what Trustee Brown had said, the transparency is far better now than it was. I mean, a few years ago, the former sheriff's office around the jail got the Black Hole Award from the Oklahoma Press Association for being, you know, obfuscating anybody know what was going on in the jail. And I can also tell you that, you know, due to some lawsuits that we commissioners have to settle, I can tell you that there's tens of thousands of pages of records of violence in that jail from when the former sheriff had it that have never been released to the public. And the level of violence is way, way, way down from what it was. I mean, like just tremendously down, cut way, way down. And the amount of information that is out there, of course, that sometimes more transparent encourages some people to nitpick and things like that. And that's some of what we're facing now. But I want to commend you and, you know, Chairman Couch and you know, others for providing that. I think that, you know, over time creates, you know, a greater level of trust amongst you know, various constituencies. I think it'll be very helpful, of course, when we go to building a new jail. As was pointed out by the CJAC committee, just, you know, although it looks we'll be building a new jail, that doesn't mean we ignore the current facility and what we're doing. And I want to commend you all, you, Greg, and Mac is here, and staff. A couple of people that aren't here. William Munday was mentioned, and Dale Fry. And it was a sacrifice for us to give up Dale at the county, let me tell you. But nobody knew more about that facility than Dale. And Dale had to bite his tongue a lot under the former operator of the jail. But I knew that would be a great fit, and I want to publicly commend him for all his efforts, as well as you all. You've done a fantastic job. I did have one question on something going forward, and something you mentioned kind of triggered me. I don't expect you to answer it now, but maybe for our next meeting, if we can talk about enhanced efforts to eliminate contraband. So if you can just kind of keep that in mind going forward, no need to go over it. Don't want to put you on the spot right now, but that would be something I think to for a future meeting, if we can try to address that, you know, and let us know what you're doing on that end. That would be fantastic.
Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Greg, your hiring predates my arrival on this trust. Looking at what has taken place over the last year, year and a half, these individuals here who were present at the time of your hiring, William's hiring, they couldn't have hired anybody better to lead this effort and start making the corrections that have been needed for so many years. And I thank you for that leadership that you came to this facility with. It's being demonstrated on not only a daily basis, but a minute-by-minute, hourly basis every day. Please also convey to your staff, it's noticed and acknowledged that as a whole, the entire team is stepping up, doing what they need to do. And all that starts with leadership, number one, and training, number two. Let me also say that I have to commend all three commissioners for biting the bullet at difficult times. All three county commissioners biting the bullet at difficult times over a lot of objections and the budget board to make the money available to start correcting these problems. If our Oklahoma legislature would do the same thing for the Department of Correction, we wouldn't be in the mess that we're in today. I leaned over and told Chief Barry that some of these before pictures look like the existing facilities in our state system right this minute, and you know that very well. I am so proud of your leadership, your team, as we all are, and the citizens of Oklahoma County ought to give you a big note of gratitude and thanks. And from my heart, I knew you could do this from day one when I heard you were, and you are doing it. It's not cheap talk. You're actually putting your actions where they need to be and focused on our detainees, the safety of those detainees on an hourly basis, the safety of our employees, and the safety of the citizens of this county. Thank you, Greg, so very much.
Thank you. Chad?
I have a question. So we discussed earlier when we met, I think, for about an hour and 45 minutes, and some issues we saw with the bail times and getting people out. At the time when you guys took over, you couldn't check warrants yourselves. And sometimes with those arresting agencies, you may hear back in 30 minutes that they don't have a warrant so they can be bailed out, or it may be a few hours. And that was causing some of the delays. And I know you were working quickly but securely to try to get it where we could run our own warrants there to kind of speed up that process. But it, as you pointed out, it has to be secure. People have to have background checks. Only certain people can have access. Are we close to being able to do that?
We're doing that. We've been
We're
doing
doing it?
that.
Great.
Yeah, we've been doing that now for nearly 2 months. The sheriff has stepped up and he helped us do that until we could get the equipment and get the training. Like you said, there's a protocol that you work with the OSBI and other agencies to gain that ability. But we are there and we have been able to do that now for about a month and a half, right, Sheriff? Yeah.
Well, and I'd also like to add, I appreciate you bearing me. I often make calls or send you messages or visit with you about things I've heard or questions or things that I had concerns about, and you're always very responsive, very quickly responsive, and you're always just straight up and tell me what's going on. I just want you to know how much I appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you.
Other comments? MT?
Greg, I think you know from our conversations that I appreciate you and everything you and your staff have done since you've been over there. I agree with everything that Joe said about you all and your performance so far. But I also want to say and acknowledge the fact of the county commissioners and the budget board supporting us in our efforts to make repairs to that facility that have been needed for a long time. And just wanted to congratulate them for having the guts to make those funds available to us to do those things.
Greg, yeah, we communicate almost every day via text or email or phone calls, and I'm down there at least once a week, oftentimes more than that. And I got to tell you, your responsiveness, your dedication is pretty impressive, and with William and your other key staff members, well, not just the key staff members, all the staff members at the detention center have really done a very good job. And again, I want to echo on what MT and others have said about the Board of Commissioners and the Budget Board. A couple of them are sitting in the back of the room. Thank you so much for helping us out, because we can change so many things, but there are a lot of things that we can't or don't have the resources to. And you've really helped us identify key areas in that jail. I mean, isn't everything over there that needs to be fixed, but the key areas so that we can really make a difference for our detainees. So thank you very much.
Since we do have some here, in addition to Sheriff Johnson, myself being on the budget board, here present with us, we have two of our budget board members. We have our county clerk, David Hooten, and our treasurer, Butch Freeman. So I wanted to publicly acknowledge them and thank them for the same reasons that the fellow trustees have done, and to our budget board members who are not present as well.
Do we have a motion to receive the report?
I move that we warmly receive and approve the report.
Second. Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Tommy Johnson,
Yes.
Loretta Radford, Chad Alexander,
Yes.
Ben Brown,
Yes.
Kevin Calvey,
Yes.
M.T. Berry,
Yes.
Joe
Yes.
Alba,
Yes, ma'am.
and Jim Couch.
Yes. Motion passes. Next up, we have a presentation regarding the Homeless Alliance. And I see my friend Dan Strong is here in the audience. Dan and I go back a ways.
A long way. You have a flinker? Thank you. Thank you all for having me here this afternoon. You've been listening to some really interesting and compelling and kind of long presentations. So I'm sort of regretting having the cup of coffee before I came here. So I'm going to make this walk and talk, but we will have some time for questions. My name's, for those of you that I don't know, my name's Dan Strawn. I'm the exec and the founder of the Homeless Alliance. It's a nonprofit in Oklahoma City. Our mission is rallying the community to end homelessness. Astute folks like yourselves will instantly recognize nothing in that mission about clothing the naked or healing the sick or housing the homeless. But when you're encouraging the community to do a better job on homelessness, sometimes they got to see you walk the walk before they're going to listen to you talk the talk. And so all those things I mentioned, we do. Our main facility covers an entire city block. It's the Westtown Homeless Resources Campus. It's at Northwest 3rd in Virginia, so it's about halfway between here and the fairgrounds. There's 3 elements to the campus: a resource center, Oklahoma City's only general use day shelter, and a small apartment complex. In our resource center, we have professional staff from 16 different government, nonprofit, and faith-based organizations, all co-located in the resource center. So social workers, case managers, physicians, pharmacists, employment specialists from about 12.5 different agencies. In our day shelter, it's Oklahoma City's only general purpose day shelter. It's a low barrier environment. Pre-pandemic, we were averaging about 340 unduplicated guests per day, about 1,400 per month, 6,000 per year. The day shelter meets people's basic needs for food, shelter, and hygiene. But more importantly, any guest at the day shelter can meet with our advocate staff, be assessed for housing programs, making the day shelter kind of a front door, a liminal space into the housing programs that are available in Oklahoma City. And there's a little picture of the day shelter. Some of you that have been around a little while may recognize the neon sign. That's the old lunchbox sign. The Homeless Alliance was started at the Lunchbox Cafe. And then we have a little apartment complex on the east end of the block. It's only 20 units. It is specifically for formerly homeless veterans and chronically homeless individuals. So year to date, in this year, so far, we have housing programs that are prevention programs. So if you have an eviction notice but you're currently housed, we can catch you up on your rent. We've done so far this year 300 households. That's households, not individuals, that we've prevented their homelessness. And then we have emergency funding, and so we've housed 69 households at local motels. Rapid rehousing, that's short-term housing assistance. So maybe we're doing first month's rent and deposit plus case management, or first month's rent and half of second month and a third of third month, and along with case management. But the idea with rapid rehousing is those folks that we are serving within 90 to 120 days, they'll be back on their feet and independent of further assistance. And then 171 households in permanent supportive housing. So those are folks with really high barriers to sustained housing that need ongoing financial support and ongoing case management services. So we have 171 households in those various permanent supportive housing. So a total of 832 households, almost 1,800 total individuals. in our housing programs. Now, I mentioned that we own 20 units. So almost all of the housing that we do is what's called scatter site. We are working with private landlords to either pay an individual's rent and deposit, or we will master lease units and then sublease them to our clients. So those federal funds that are coming in to address homelessness are going right back out into the community, paying rent, utilities, water bills, that kind of stuff. There's some other things we do besides housing programs and a day shelter. Curbside Chronicle, Oklahoma's only street magazine, and just, oh, by the way, according to the Oklahoma Society for Professional Journalists, the best magazine in Oklahoma for 4 years in a row. Not the best homeless magazine, not the best nonprofit magazine, the best goddamn magazine. 4 years in a row. So, in addition, we have Curbside Flowers, which is a brick and mortar flower shop, Curbside Apparel, which is a t-shirt printing business, and Sasquatch Shaved Ice, which is a snow cone business. All of those are used to employ and provide case management and housing assistance to formerly homeless individuals. Sasquatch Shaved Ice is special. There's a snow cone stand in the Plaza District, one right across from the ballpark, and a mobile snow cone stand that we can take to events. It employs transition age youth, 14 to 24, who either have had or are now involved with the juvenile justice system, the foster care system, or in a lot of cases, both. And providing employment and an income in addition to case management and education services for those kids. And then we have housing navigators, Homeless Alliance employees that demonstrated facility with placing people in housing at the Diversity Center, on 39th and Penn, at Palomar, at the Diversion Hub, at Restore OKC, and at the YWCA. In Oklahoma City, any given night, about 1,300 literally homeless individuals, and I want to clarify literally homeless, so that's people that are either in a homeless shelter or in a place not meant for human habitation, a car, a tent, under a bridge somewhere on a park bench. It does not count what we call couch homeless, so people who have lost their own housing but are staying with a friend or somebody from their Sunday school class or somebody from work without benefit of a lease. There's just not really a good way to count those individuals. You drive down any street in Oklahoma City and there might be couch homeless in any home you go by, and you would never know. So these are literally homeless, about 14,000, a little more than that, annually. 2/3 male, 1/3 female. And the population skews young. And that's a good reason and a bad reason. The good reason is if you're over 55, we have more housing assets and resources that are available to people that are over 55. The bad reason is because people who are chronically homeless for long periods of time, their average lifespan is only about 55 years. The population also skews towards minorities. African Americans, Native Americans, both overrepresented in the population as compared to the general population, just as they are in poverty. And poverty is the driving cause of homelessness in Oklahoma City. About 16% of our homeless population are families with children. 9%, and this slide says suffered from domestic violence. We'll get into that a little more in a minute. These are people whose proximate cause of their homelessness was domestic violence. So they became homeless from fleeing domestic violence. So it's about just under 10% of Oklahoma City's homeless population. 31% self-report severe mental illness, and 34% self-report substance use. And I don't want you to take from that 65% of the homeless population in Oklahoma City has either mental illness or substance use. There's a great deal of overlap between these two. And it's kind of a chicken and egg thing. Untreated mental illness can lead to substance use, and heavy substance use can lead to mental illness. So only about 40% or so of the Oklahoma City's homeless population has mental illness, substance use, or both. 10% of our homeless population are veterans. It's pretty good for an urban population. Lots of larger cities, veterans make up about 20% of the homeless population. Oklahoma City has really worked hard the last 7 years or so to get veterans into housing. Chronically homeless individuals, as I mentioned before, those are people that are homeless for long periods of time or homeless over and over. They're about 1 out of 5 of our homeless population. Of them, 41% report that they're prescribed medications that they're not able to take. 41% report being attacked or beaten since they became homeless. Nearly half report chronic health issues, liver, kidneys, stomach, heart, or lungs. And 2 out of every 3 report that emotional, physical, psychological, or sexual trauma contributed to their homelessness. Oklahoma City has 8 overnight shelters for people experiencing homelessness. City Rescue Mission, 350 beds, adult men, women, and families with children. The City Care Night Shelter is brand new, just opened in April 6th of this year. It's a low barrier shelter, so it takes men, women, and families. Salvation Army has 108 beds, adult men, women, and families. Grace is 80 beds. It's over in the Stockyards part of town. Adult men only. Jesus House is only for people with co-occurring disorders, so a diagnosed mental illness with medication plus co-occurring substance use issues. And then CSU is a 25-bed shelter for transition-age youth. Pivot is 22 beds for that same population. And of course, YW is our domestic violence shelter in Oklahoma City. For unsheltered homeless in Oklahoma City, 76% report justice involvement. And more than a third report becoming homeless less than a year after leaving jail or prison. We survey the population with some frequency, and so one of the things we ask is what are the factors that contributed to your homelessness? See, 51% unemployment, 27% lack of transportation. Again, astute fellows like and ladies like yourself will recognize that totals more than 100%. That's because homelessness is a complex issue, and it is almost never the result of one thing. We ask people to list the causes of their homelessness, and these are the answers. We also asked what could have prevented your homelessness on the front end. 45%, almost half, talked about rental assistance, 41% employment assistance, family support services, obviously mental health services and substance use treatment services, and then primary health care services, an unmet need. So that's all I had. I'd be delighted to take any questions you might have.
Dan, thank you for coming down today, but also thank you for what you do. There's no one that's done more for the homelessness in the Oklahoma City metro area over the last 20 years with compassion than Dan Strong. So,
thank you.
But if anybody has any questions or comments for Dan?
Keep up the great work.
Yes.
Dan, first of all, I ditto what Jim said, because I heard about you long before I met you. And everyone has asked me, don't you know about the Homeless Alliance? So I'm very proud of your work, even though I have nothing to do with it.
Thank you.
But I do have one question. So it looks like from your stats, you take in a lot of people. Are there any criteria for whom you turn down or put out of your shelter?
So in the day shelter is designed to be a low barrier shelter. So if you're floridly psychotic and you're shouting at somebody that no one else can see, we want you in that day shelter. And somebody's going to talk to you about engaging in appropriate mental health services. But if you say I'm not crazy, then you're still safe, warm, and dry in the day shelter. And same thing with serious substance use. Somebody's going to talk to you about getting into treatment, but if you say today's not that day, you're still safe, warm, and dry in the day shelter. The one place we have to draw the line at is violence. But even then, your ban is that day. the thing about people that work in the homeless biz that I have learned is that we believe fundamentally in the ongoing possibility of redemption. That the person you were yesterday doesn't have to be the person you are today. And so if you get put out for misbehavior, the next day, if you can come back in if you're going to behave.
So the housing that you lease.
Uh-huh.
For the veterans, can they stay in that indefinitely?
Yeah, for our permanent supportive housing, they're basically signing a 1-year lease, and it's just like the lease you or I would sign, and it's as long as they comply with the terms of the lease, which are again just like a lease you or I would sign, then yeah, it can last forever.
Well, thank you.
Sure.
Dan, thanks for coming down. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, my pleasure.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no. Yes. All right. Do we have a motion to receive the report?
So moved.
Presentation? Motion, second?
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Please call the roll.
Tommy Johnson,
Yes.
Loretta Radford, Chad Alexander, Ben Brown,
Yes.
Kevin Calvey.
Yes.
M.T. Berry,
Yes.
Joe Albaugh,
Yes, ma'am.
and Jim Couch.
Yes. Motion passes. Item 8 is discussion and action regarding a contract with Tubasing Solutions for an uninterruptible power supply for the new jail control system. Trustees have any questions regarding this item?
Very much needed. I'll move the item.
Moved by Commissioner Galvey, second.
Second.
Second by Sheriff Johnson. Please call the roll.
Tommy Johnson, Loretta Radford,
Yes.
Ben Brown,
Yes.
Kevin Calvey,
Yes.
M.T. Berry,
Yes.
Joe Albaugh,
Yes, ma'am.
Jim Couch.
Yes, the motion passes. Thank you. Item 9 is discussion regarding the approval of application for the credit card for the Criminal Justice Authority for a bank accounts to facilitate purchasing with the Bank of Oklahoma. Are there any questions or comments regarding this item?
I move approval.
Motion from Chief Berry, a second from Trustee Albaugh. Please call the roll.
Tommy Johnson,
Yes.
Loretta Radford,
Yes.
Kevin Calvey,
Yes.
M.T. Berry,
Yes.
Joe Albaugh,
Yes, ma'am.
Jim Couch.
Yes, motion passes. Item 10 is just to announce that we all recognize that we're changing our calendar and we're going to the first meeting of the month. And so we are meeting 2 weeks a day. When we change from the third meeting to the first meeting, we will be meeting 2 weeks from today on the first Monday in January 3rd. The next item is to consider going into executive session. There are 2 items specifically listed on the agenda, and I would take a motion to go into executive session related to the 2 items listed on the agenda.
So moved.
And to approve item 11.
Okay,
It's suggested that the motion be to approve item 11.
and there's such a motion?
Second.
Let me make sure I understand. This is consider and approve entering into the executive session. And this is not one that requires us to deliberate in executive session before approving the item?
This is the item by which you enter executive session.
Gotcha. Okay. I will move the item.
Second.
Motion and second. Please call the roll.
Tommy Johnson,
Yes.
Loretta Radford, Ben Brown, Kevin Calvey,
Yes.
M.T. Berry,
Yes.
Joe Albaugh,
Yes, ma'am.
Jim Couch.
Yes. Motion passes. We are in executive session.
You don't understand it? I'll show you. Yeah, thank you.
Here's the keys.
Do we have a motion to leave executive session and reconvene in open session?
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Tommy Johnson,
Yes.
Loretta Radford, Kevin Calvey,
Yes.
M.T. Berry,
Yes.
Joe Alba,
Yes, ma'am.
Jim Couch.
Yes. Motion carries. There is no action needed on item 13. And item 14 is adjournment. Is there a motion for adjournment?
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Tommy Johnson,
Yes.
Loretta Radford, Kevin Calvey,
Yes.
M.T. Berry,
Yes.
Joe Alba,
Yes, ma'am.
Jim Couch.
Yes, we are adjourned, and I hope you all have a great holiday season.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas.
Yes.
We all have to sign it.